Okay, so we had quite a few technical lessons in the strategy podcast this week. So I want to roll back up to to the top level and look down a little bit and view things from the global perspective before we get into that SPCE case study. This is Ken at Tortoise Capital for the strategy podcast for May 3rd, 2020. So what I want to talk about right now is this idea of managing the moment. And I want to put the moment of your decisions in a larger context in order to make that low risk and easy and smooth and intentional and a reflection of who you are and your best self. There's a lot of work that we've got to be doing all the time so that when we approach the decision, we enter that decision space, the decision we make is the one that we want so that we can be intentional. In one sense, when you're looking at a decision to enter, what you're really doing is that you've gone through the planning and prep phase. In planning, you develop your themes and targets, how the market is working, what are the logical relationships that are working. Like right now, the market's in a critical state. Energy has been on a rebound. It's postured to resume well. Things like Brazil have been at the bottom of their selling and are just starting to increment up. The U.S. markets have had a 50% retracement off of their disastrous sell-off, but are now poised in a critical state, ready to go in either direction in a large way. And a theme just entered the marketplace this weekend when Buffett announces that they are completely exiting all of their airline positions. And when he gets out, he gets all out. And when Buffett moves, the whole world reacts. So that was a piece of information that was added after the market that's not available to us when we're making our decision on Friday. Now remember that our Friday case study was on SPCE, Virgin Galactic. Well, that's an airline. Is there going to be any repercussion about Buffett getting out of commercial airliners on Virgin, which is also poised at a critical state? Yeah, it could be. We'll see. But that was information that was not available to us in the case study with 10 minutes to go into the close. So that is an example of one of those exogenous events that are out there always waiting to enter the marketplace, and tens and hundreds and thousands of them at any given time can be doing that. And some of them are new, never before been seen. Buffett has never taken an action where he's gotten all out of the airlines all at once on a weekend in the middle of a pandemic. So no set of rules that are based on past events has incorporated the effects of exactly that event. And so you got to think to yourself, is the Buffett decision similar to other decisions of that magnitude? And should the response to that one be predictable and forecastable on the basis of other decisions that are of similar magnitude? And how would you know, and how would you estimate that? So there's a certain amount of dynamism always built into that system, and no amount of rules and models and forecasts and predictions can account for what we haven't seen yet. It's like we're playing poker with the market, and it's good to remember that the market hasn't shown you all the cards in the deck yet. It has more cards than you've seen. It may have more cards than you can imagine. And so our confidence that comes from backtesting analysis and looking through the rearview mirror should be tempered by the humble awareness that the world is going to be different in the future. It hasn't quite been like the way it's going to be before. We're mindful that though history doesn't repeat, it does rhyme. And so we're not just flipping coins, but we're making decisions in an artful way in an area of chaos that's not quite random, but which is not just complicated. There's some artful judgment that's got to be um, in effect. Oh, I'm not interpreting anything. All I'm doing is reacting to a set of. Somebody asked me if I'm interpreting that he's not out yet. I think when he announces he's out, he's probably all out, because otherwise he might be held accountable for that. And then he'd be an idiot to say he's going to get out of all his positions before he's gotten out of it, because that's going to be talking against his own book. And so he's not that dumb. You know, I don't know if he's dumb at all, but if any part of Buffett is dumb, he's not dumb enough to tell you what he's going to do in the middle of doing it. So hard to say. So I say all that simply to say we've got to be mindful of all that context, and that the purpose of our planning is to be aware of those themes that are out there in the ecosystem that are pushing around the targets that we're interested in, and which we might be interested in. And it's pushing around other actors and their emotions and their rule sets, which is going to affect the opportunities we see and may spill over into our trading. So that's what our planning is all about, is to try to gain an appreciation of and a selection of certain targets and themes that we want to be in a position to exploit. And that's a choice that we're going to make. And it's based on beliefs. And then we're going to do some preparations, so analysis and rehearsal and gathering our resources and reviewing our battle drills and all that stuff and visualizing, so that we can come to this state where we are ready for something, ready to trade. And when we're ready to trade, that's a choice that you get to make. You get to decide when you are ready to trade. What are your criteria? What are your must-haves? How do you get rid of the non-value add things? How do you map that process and determine what things are actually adding value for you? And how do you make sure you're doing those things and doing them well and not wasting time on non-essential matters? Because when we're ready to trade, it's because we've done our planning and prep and our analysis, and we've built the battle drills that we're going to use when it comes time to execute. We haven't executed yet. All we can say is that we're ready to trade, and now the market is going to give us some opportunities that may be triggers. And so we're monitoring conditions in the marketplace and the context, and we're stalking, so that as we approach the decision to execute, we see those conditions coming together, converging into our decision region. Then when it comes time to actually execute with our battle drill, we don't have to spend extra time thinking about what we're going to do, because that's already prepared. We can strike with no mind, just action. So choosing those battle drills and then preparing to be able to execute those battle drills with affirmation and energy is all about, that's part of being ready, so that we can execute having already thought all the things that needed to be thought. So there is a transition now between all this prep work, and that's why I divide the plan and prepare to one side, and then execute and assess to the second side. And each one of those four areas has parts of us that are working. And then the assessment is, if we survive the trade, then we can assess the trade. We can assess how we executed, but further, we can go back and see that trade that we executed. Did we do that as part of our plan? Were we well prepared for it? Is there something that we could do better? Is there something we did well that we want to sustain? Were we actually ready? Did we have the time, will, pattern, and money available so that when we were ready and then the trigger came in and the pattern was there, did we apply the right battle drill and then execute? And then we can also ask how well, later on, how well did we assess the particulars of this trait? So we can do some meta assessment and take a look at our analysis. Maybe the best and most efficient way to do that is to have a trusted other also assess your performance. And then in the comparison of the two assessments, you'll get some insight about the quality of your own feedback. At least you'll have two blind men helping you look at the elephant to get a better idea of what that elephant's all about. So if planning and preparing is that first half, we can also break that into understand, visualize, and describe. That is this iterative process of getting that flash of insight that ties together all of those moving pieces and concepts and our understanding of them about that ecosystem into a moment where it's clear to us. And part of that is visualizing images, templates or concepts or flashcards, something that allows us to see what's going on in a visual way. And then describing in words what's going on, the making sense from the narrative. And so these three processes are iterative and overlapping and simultaneous, and it's all going into understanding our plan so that we can prepare in a usual way so that we can be ready. And that's our understanding of the environment. Understand, visualize, and describe. So it has both this is those three elements of learning that are described in that brain mode power: the kinesthetic, that flash, that physical visceral feeling of deep understanding in your roots, in your gut. That's a physical feeling. I got it. And then the visual image, and then the words. And for me, that's kind of the same sequence that I go through. The visceral feeling precedes the visualization, and then it only then becomes the words. And that's like fastest, medium, and slowest way of processing all that data. Now, I'm strongly auditory, so I don't really feel like I fully understand it, and I can't even complete the storyboard that I visualized until I can put it all in words in an artful way. And then once I get to this point, I really feel like I've got it. So for me, this is an iterative process of making sense. It's a model of the world. It's not the world. I don't confuse the two. And then when I'm ready, the second part of this formula: direct, lead, and assess. So that's what I'm executing and assessing. So the execution is all about directing. And that is like choosing the right battle drill and the right sequence and applying the right resources and the focus. And then leading is that act of courage to make the decisions boldly, swiftly, with power, in a measured, disciplined way, so that when it's all said and done, we can then assess how well we did, and we can also assess where we are and what's next. And then surviving all of that, we can then apply that same assessment, that meta assessment, to how well we did the understand, visualize, describe, direct, lead, and assess. So that assessment is really operating at multiple levels for us. A couple things that I want to reinforce from this week. And really for the whole previous month, in each of the nightly lessons and on each of the individual trade cases, we've kind of drilled down deep into whatever the tactic or the technique or that specific process was for that particular trade. So I want to fly back out and just say, there's tens and hundreds of hours of videos in the various courses, and the top level things, the top of the mountain or the top of the iceberg, some essentials that I just want to make sure that we reinforce and get this right in your bones. The first idea that in order to have a trade, any trade at any time frame, I got to have four things: time, will, pattern, and money. There's got to be enough time left in the day, in the week, in the move, so that the expected gain still has time to unfold. So the day trade is the easiest way to look at that, and that is that, if there's only 15 minutes to the open, I can't be starting entirely new positions and build them out. I've got to be ready to run out of that time. If it's a swing trade and we're already 7 days into this thing and it hasn't, I haven't entered yet, the original signal may no longer be valid if it happened 7 days ago. In the longer term system, if it's coming in towards the end of the month and I'm getting ready to make some rebalancing decisions, I don't want to be starting a new position perhaps because there's not time yet to do that. On the annual rebalancing, I got to be mindful of where in the year we are and how that can influence the shape of moves. Where are we in the business cycle? Where are we in the earnings cycle? Where are we with respect to earnings releases? That kind of stuff. Where are we in the 4-year presidential election cycle? So we're getting ready to come into that station. And if that's going to have an enormous impact on policy and directionality of the market. And it's not just the presidential result, but it's who's going to own the Senate, because that's a toss-up. So I've got to be mindful of the effect of time on this thing. And so one way to operationalize that is looking at the MACD histogram in the 4 seasons at some particular time. Where are we in that time cycle? Where are we in the time cycle of RLCO? Where are we in the time cycle of risk Z? Those are all oscillators and they have smooth flowing patterns. And so where we are with respect to the time cycle matters. The will of time, will, pattern, and money. Am I trading from a zero state, from my best self, from that state of mind where I said psychologically I am actually ready? Am I in my zero state before I make my decision to act? If not, don't trade. Patterns. The patterns I want you to concentrate on, and for the Hybrid Frog workshop, are these second generation RLCO patterns. The Hybrid Frog as the opening round of the intraday chain trading. And then the other 4 patterns, which are fractal across all time frames. The OWL pattern, a 5 criteria deliberate reversion to the mean trade after an unambiguous move. The emerging dragon, which is a continuation pattern where it's put in a leg, it's paused, and then looks like it's resuming that trend. So that's the second leg up, or even the third leg up. On the other end, the collapsing dragon, where it's rolled over and is getting ready to crash through a resistance and continue what was the previous strong downward trend. My favorite pattern of all. And then the sideways quiet channel series. It could be SQC, it could be a Z3P, it could be the super pinch. But that's what you do in the absence of an unambiguous move. It's an unambiguous no move or an unambiguous sideways move. And then that rolls right back up into the Hybrid Frog. The Hybrid Frog is a special pattern for the intraday traders and the guys that are hybrid between intraday and swing trading, because it starts the day with an equally large probability of breaking out in either direction as a consequence of the market being closed for 16 hours and all that emotion and news and orders being stacked up, and then the responses to those opening rounds. And then the Hybrid Frog or the sideways quiet channel, they start moving out and they morph into that chain of owls and dragons, and then ultimately back into the sideways quiet channel again. Well, if those are the specific patterns that we're looking for, those are the patterns that you've got to master and know how to define them in your time frame, and know how to use the indicators that tell you if those criteria are met and if the trade can be framed. And that those patterns are shaped by the context of the market and sector and target condition. So you've got to know the MACD histogram, the 4 seasons, to know where it is in the life cycle, to judge how strong those opportunities are, or which opportunities you ought to be looking for based on where we are in the 4 seasons of MACD. You got to understand the RLCO Bollinger Band framework as a way to make calibrated, adaptive, volatility-informed sense making of where the price is. You got to appreciate regression line fractal framework as a way to rapidly judge the difference of opinion about fair value between the long-term holders, the RL270, and the short-term traders, the RL10. That helps us understand that dynamic psychology difference or agreement between those two guys that are pushing and pulling that price around. And that interpretation helps us understand which of these patterns are likely to be strong. Support and resistance and the NDX give us some of that static trade architecture, that scaffolding that allows us to make price-based estimates of reasonable moves up and down to help us understand where price can go, might go, could go, and to give us a heads up, a warning about where to be prepared to make decisions as a function of where price has been moving previously. So all of those sense-making models, these are interpretation schemes that allow us to make sense of the 5 patterns. The pattern triggers a battle drill. The context helps us shape out the price levels that give us the trade architecture. And all of that comes back into pattern. So time, will, pattern, and money. And then money is really that psychological and asset allocation decision that talks about, in the context of this trade and of this day or week or whatever, in context of this system, in context of the entire portfolio, what is the professional allocation of risk based on what our risk profile in our meta portfolio looks like. So that's the context that tells us how much risk capital we have to be used to apply to this particular trade that has met all of our other criteria. But all 4 of those things got to be in place or you're not ready to trade. And so all of these things are really part of the triggers and opportunities that come from the ecosystem, which is the market. So that comes into the ready to trade or not. If you're not aware of those things or haven't taken those things into account, you're trading blind. You're out there for hunting tigers and not aware of the jungle. And that tiger's hunting you. So to be ready to trade means that you've done all of these things. You've got this environmental savvy. You've done the rational planning and analysis and rehearsals. And then you've gone through a process to get to your battle drills. So how do we get to battle drills built? How do we know how to execute so that when it comes time to execute, we don't have to be thinking about these well-trained and rehearsed techniques? Well, I want to back up and talk about the learning process and how we're going to derive the lessons learned from the things that we're reading about and the things that we're doing, and render that into battle drills. Once we get those battle drills and then we're prepared to trade, and then the environment triggers us, and then we decide to trade, and then we get our results and we assess it, we're going to go through a process to evaluate and assess our performance. We're going to take a look at all 4 of those phases: plan, prepare, execute, and assess. And we're going to look at each one of those phases. We're going to say, what are the things that we want to sustain? What are the things that we want to improve? And then of all those things, what are the things that we're going to commit to action on? And then pick a couple to make sure that we really focus on fixing a few things and improving a couple things and getting better each day in every way. And that's the process of going from our assessment into an action plan so that we can be an active student of the market and our systems and ourselves. Well, if that's the way we're going to assess, let's take a look at how that rolls into the building up of battle drills. So I want to say that the environment in our trading gives us all the raw materials that we need to produce what's ultimately going to become our battle drills in our own personal body of knowledge. Those raw materials are in the form of the experiences that we've lived through, either directly ourselves or through the experiences that we have lived vicariously through the eyes of trusted others who are speaking in a common language. And we can learn from their stories almost as if we were there. We can take on the role of the hero in their story or the actors, and then we can feel what those feelings are like. And if we have a common language of expression and a body of knowledge, then we can start reinforcing our own learning and take on some of those experiences without having to be burned by the fire ourselves. We can learn from others that, yeah, fire is actually hot. You don't want to put your hand into it. So the way I want you to think about that is I think of it in terms of the big 5 pieces of feedback that get your attention as an adult learner. I want you to think about what I asked you to do about the SPCE case study, and I was going through a mental process yesterday of visualization and imagery and audio and whatnot, and I asked you to have a note sheet where you would take notice of things that seemed noteworthy. What got your attention? What triggered you? One of the reasons to do that is to follow up on the things that got your attention, but turning that lens back on yourself, you want to follow it back to the source and say, why did that thing, of all the things that were said or weren't said, why was that the thing that triggered me? What's that connected to at a deep level to something that's already deep inside me? And what did that trigger suggest that I wanted to do? Or what did I feel like doing when that trigger happened? So this itemization, this note-taking of these 5 categories not only allows us to go forward about the lessons and the concepts, but it also is a connection to our unconscious and subconscious, that all those roots that we have to find the things that seem to get our attention and trigger us for whatever reason. There may or may not be an emotional response to it. But that's one of the ways that you can start unpacking your internal wiring. So the 5 categories of feedbacks of things that you take notice of for me are these 5. When you are going through a trade or reviewing your own trade or listening to a trade of others or listening to a video or just observing something going on, what seems to be the best thing? What seems to be the least effective things? Where is it troublesome? What's the best takeaway? What's the thing that you could say, that is so good, I can just start applying it right now because it already fits into a gap that I have and I can see right away without low risk idea it's going to be good. Like a checklist or a process or a flashcard or something, a log sheet, and just, that's so good, it's immediately obviously good. What are the questions that I have? What doesn't quite make sense and I want to follow up with? And then finally, what is the aha moment? How did I get surprised in that narrative or that event or that observation or that process or that game? The aha moment is always interesting in the world of adult learning because we've internalized so many things and we're working simultaneously on so many ideas at a deep level that we're kind of cruising along with minimum attention, just enough attention being paid to all these processes. And then from those estimates of what the world is like, we make estimates of what the future will be like, and we act as if our assumptions are true until something happens that surprised us. It did this instead of that. The world showed us left instead of right. I wasn't expecting that. Whenever that happens, you should take note of it and gather as much of that information about that moment as you can, because there was just something revealed by the world. It just showed you a new card that you weren't expecting. And that's going to trace back to some set of assumptions or beliefs or expectations or conclusions that you drew that didn't pan out in the world. There was your estimate of the future was different. So when you feel that little jolt of whoa, surprised, notice how quickly you feel it before you're even seeing that thing. You just sense instantly, oh wow, and then you see it, and then you put some words to it, bam. So those 5 categories all become interesting moments in the learning experience and is the first step towards doing a systematic and structured and disciplined approach to understanding your environment. So one of the things that my teaching partner, Jason Ballard, does is he calls that the splat. He likes listening to me or watching what's going on or checking things out with a blank sheet, and he just gets it as much data as he can, and he crunches it into one of those 5 categories when it happens, and he splats it on a page, and then when it's over, he has time to start sifting and sorting and aligning and adjusting and adding some structure. And the Cornell note sheets that we've offered are ways to structure some of those insights in a way that helps you begin categorizing those experiential learning moments that we haven't even fully processed yet, but we are putting together the pieces. That's like the Cornell note-taking sheet allows you to take these 5 kinds of bricks and start organizing them in a structured way. Was it something at the practice level, at the synthesis level? Was it a keyword and concept? Was it a note? Was it something that applied to self, systems, or markets? Is it an action step that you want to get to? So take a look at that blank Cornell note sheet for every learning event and render all of those moments of Zen, those moments of insight, and get them reflected in your Cornell note sheet so you can start assessing those. What these 5 categories and then the Cornell note sheets allow you to start doing is taking the that flow of raw sensory experience and starting to sort, sift, categorize, organize. It provides some structure, and that may lead to some mind maps, which are the beginning visual flashcards eventually that help you organize different concepts in a logical way or in a conceptual way. And then finally, that gets rendered into flashcards that allow you to visualize that moment of insight, and that flashcard will suggest to you some narratives or stories or phrases. And then those can act as triggers to behavior. Once you've rendered this into an actionable flashcard, like a 2-hour battle drill or a process for how to learn, this little flashcard over here is really a trigger that says, yeah, after each trade and after each day or week or month or quarter or year, I need to go through a systematic, structured way to get all the actionable items in order to build my action plan, and I can study my process like a good student. Well, when these are connected to the 5 patterns and how to trade them, that flashcard, that trigger, is something that you've chosen, that you've trained on, and that you trust all the prep work so that you have an instantaneous response as a battle drill. So when you've done all the prep work and you have confidence that you're ready, and you're ready with your battle drills, and you've got time, will, pattern, and money, and then the trigger occurs, you can make that decision in what seems like no time with no mind, and then just act and violently execute with discipline and energy, and then assess the results as part of an ongoing practice, and then systematically render it into this kind of organized flow. Well, that's sort of the top level integration of plan, prepare, execute, assess, understand, visualize, describe, direct, lead, and assess. The big five, the Cornell note systems, how to build battle drills, how to assess. And all of that is geared so that in the moment of decision making, how to manage the moment manages itself, because all of the ingredients for lightning to strike are there. The environment has provided an opportunity. You have provided the ready trader. All of your preparation and systems have provided the context in which that action should be taken. And then, like lightning flash, it happens. And then you survive, and then you assess that, and then reset and get ready to go again. So that's sort of the gestalt, the top level integration of all those pieces. And so I want to highlight to you that these elements over here on the right are the essential concepts, the 5 patterns, the interpretive schemes, kind of in that order of sequence. And then those 4 elements to know, really, are you ready to make that decision? Have you really got all 4 of those things? And have you rehearsed that battle drill? And did you prepare your targets and all that stuff? And then are you prepared to get the most out of each learning opportunity? And every trade is not just a trade, it's just the next best opportunity to learn a lesson that's going to inform and improve every future trading case. So the real value of the case is not the money that it earns. The real value of that trade is not the money that it earns, although that's valuable, but it's the opportunity to get better on every future case. You talk about compounded return on investment. It's what you do with that information and improve your battle drills, improve your processes, improve your readiness to trade. That's where the compounded return on investment comes from. So now I want to say something about the SPCE case study before we talk specifically about it. I want to put that, this weekend process into the context of the previous slide. So the SPC case study, seen on its face, was really 2 things. First, what do I do now with 10 minutes remaining before the close and up $2,200, 500 shares in an open position that is at no lose plus dinner for 2 at the end of a week in which the market was behaving poorly, but SPCE was great today. And then in a larger context of the market at a critical state and SPCE at a critical state, postured to make large moves in either direction. What do I do right now with those 500 shares and the 9 minutes that I have remaining? Secondarily, this was an opportunity to consider a separate trading plan, and that is, what do I want to be prepared to do on Monday with SPCE? Almost, not regardless of what I do today, but taking into account what I do today now carries over into what I might want to do Monday. Like I could do probably 4 things, I guess. I didn't see anybody take the 4th course of action, but I'll talk about it. So the first 3 courses of action that everybody so far has taken at least one of these positions. And one of them was get all out, make bank, and be flat and relaxed and risk-free in the weekend. So all out now and cash 125. Another group said wait until the last minute and then either keep it or cash it at wherever it is. So exit at close, or get out at plus 50 if it sells off, but otherwise keep it in and then make a decision in the last minute. The third idea was some form of keep it overnight, and that had 2 variations. Keep some of it. I had some people that kept a third, kept a half, kept 2/3, and other people that kept all of it. So 4 different positions that could have been taken. The 4th feature was to take some of the market's money that we'd already earned and increase the size of the position based on an expectation of the possibility of a gap up, like add 1,500 shares back on, or 500 more, or whatever. Nobody took that position. Nobody took the position of increasing the risk with the market's money that we had in hand. Now remember, the argument to do that would have been something like this. The market had 2 days of sell-off, is in a critical state and is equally likely to go up as down, and there could be some good news that could cause it to gap up, and I want to capture the gap up if it works. And SPCE, of all the things in the stack, are postured to gap up because it had a positive day when everything else suffered. So if the market rebounds, there may be even more money coming into SPC as a short-term leader. On the basis of that argument, a person could decide, I'm going to take $500 additional of the 2,000 that SPC earned me, and I'm going to convert that to another 500 or 1,000 shares or whatever. Nobody so far has taken that position, but that's one of the positions that could be taken. Now, all of those positions are what to do about the Friday position. So there's probably 6 or 7 things that variations we just described right there. It could have been, buying options to hedge against the risk or to leverage. Anyway, the second decision about what to do on Monday is a second trading plan, and some folks took a look at that as Monday as the start of a swing trade, and other people took the position of, well, I'm going to be postured for chain trading intraday with a turbo, just like I did today, and then I will make a decision on whether to grow it into a swing trade on the basis of what direction it goes. Because SPCE is actually well postured to be a swing in either direction because it's so volatile intraday and on a swing trade basis. Other people just decided, hey, I only want to do turbo and play it a day at a time, and if and only if it works out, I'll think about a swing trade. Other people talked about it as a structured swing trade as their primary approach on Monday, and they laid out a trading plan based on mechanical entries, going long if it takes out the high, going short if it takes out the low. I had a couple of people that said, I only want to play this long. And one person said, I'll play it swing, but only if it goes short. I'll play it long intraday, but I'll go on a swing short if it violates. So when you start adding the combinations of all the things that could be done Friday with all the things that could be done on Monday, you start getting probably 25 or 30 different variations, and that's just with a group of people that are looking at one symbol through a standard set of lenses. Imagine how many different trading plans are out there that we've got to be able to account for. Always trying to remember that most people are not looking at the market in the way that we are, and let's respect them enough they could do some wild and crazy things too, which is where some of that volatility comes from. So in a nutshell, without trying to get too much further into the weeds on that, at the first level, on the basis of the trade frame, there were 2 trade frames that people were building. The first trade frame, number 1, was the short-term trade frame about what to do in the remaining 8 minutes till the close. The second trade frame was what to do about it on Monday in a longer time frame. And trade frame number 1 is nested inside trade frame number 2 because trade frame number 2 is a larger time frame and incorporates a deeper look back. So you could see those 2 things as related and nested, and you could think about that as being the trading plan itself for SPCE, which has 2 different trade frames at least. Well, I now want you to think about other symbols. Each one of them could have their own sets of short-term and long-term hybrid trading plans. And so however many symbols are in your stack, each one of them has a trading plan. And then you start looking at how you're going to organize your asset allocation among those different targets. And what you're really coming up with is a trading strategy that includes all of the trading plans that may or may not fire on Monday or next week or this month of May, because we're just starting May. So there's lots of overlapping trading plans that you've got to keep track of. Well, this is all just the external analysis we're dealing with SPCE, the case study. And so the process that I asked you to go through using those trade frame questions and then looking at the markets using the multi-time frame, multi-lens analysis, the MACD histogram, risk Z, trade structures, RLFF, all of those things. The characteristics of your analysis has some or all of these qualities. I was asking you to be systematic, to do routine things routinely and efficiently without waste, with confidence, to use templates and procedures for known quantities and known structures so we can rapidly frame it out and leverage our expertise, which has been honed over time. So draftsmen do this all the time. Carpenters use their squares, masons use their little guides, and they have standard procedures. That's characteristic qualities of craft work, having templates and procedures and standards. All of us adopted the language of the lessons that we've been teaching. So we talked about high of the day, low of the day, range stats, frog boxes, emerging and collapsing dragons, the four seasons, the risk Z. Those standard concepts and the language that ties them all together populates our standards and procedures and templates and gives us the ability to communicate in a professional, efficient manner with ourselves in a standard way and with each other when we're trying to learn from each other. Documenting those processes and trade frames now creates a system of accountability because you've documented your analysis and decisions. And now when you go back to your assessment, you can evaluate the quality of how you planned and prepared. And then when you execute this trade going forward tomorrow, you can evaluate the execution and you can assess the assessment in terms of using this template and how well did you do it. Did you make your action steps actionable? Were they in the form of SMART goals? Did you share those with an accountability partner? And did you just pick the one or two things that look to be the biggest payoffs? So those are the qualities of the systematic professional procedure that you brought to the construction of your two trade frames. So that's operating at the level of the trade frame. It's looking at how you did things, and then you're going to feed that forward into did that help you become ready to trade? And were you psychologically ready to trade and you had your screen set up so that when the environment gave you a signal and that created a trigger in you to want to act, the impulse to act, did you have the presence of mind to be in the zero state and time, will, pattern, money, and still ready to trade? And then your action was swift and strong and fast and from the zero state and decisive? And then did you tabulate the results? So this trade frame is not only connected to these processes over here, but also when you put it into action. So it has two angles of perspective on all the planning and prep, and then on the execution and assessment. Now, the trade strategy, here's an opportunity to look at how what you decided to do on Friday and on Monday is connected to each other and to the other things that you wanted to do as you're looking at the market and the sectors and the other targets that you might prepare. So you can start judging the collection of things that you were prepared to do, that you planned to do, that you prepared to do, that you were ready to do, and that you actually did. And that's your trading strategy. And then you can take one step back even further and say, how is my integrated holistic trading strategy as a way to get me plan, prepared, execute, and assess? Did I really feel like I understood, visualized, and described? Did I direct, lead, and assess? Did I do all of those things? And how was my note taking and state of mind and my zero state and time, will, pattern, and money? Well, the same process of learning to improve our templates and procedures and standards, our battle drills, comes from actually doing it on SPCE. Don't even look at another video. Look at yourself through, as if you were a videographer. Take a video of you finishing up your SPCE trading plan and how you traded it. That's the most important video for you to watch. And so there's got to be a part of you, that note taker, that camera crew that's watching, and you know that what you're going to do now is not just study the particulars of the trade frame that you built, the artifact that you produced, but the process that you used to go through making it and applying it and then assessing it. So that's taking an extra step back and looking at your self-development process in here. And then this whole structure of systematic, routine, templates, procedures, standards, language, concepts, accountability, and documented intentional action, that's not just for how to trade SPCE on Friday and then tomorrow on Monday, but it's the same qualities that you bring that will support continuous improvement in yourself and your psychology as a continuous learning process, continuous learning system, to get better and better based on evidence that you created with your hard work. And then anchor that into who you are at the identity level and your attitude of embracing the spirit of continuous improvement based on evidence, and building the habits and practices that allow you to get the most learning value out of every trade. It's better to do one trade and thoroughly than 10 half-assed trades, because that creates waste, and that's not good. Waste, bad. All right. So be like F. Buckminster Fuller when they asked him, what does it mean to be human, Bucky? And he said, I seem to be a verb. Be an action verb. Be in the process of becoming your better self through this continuous improvement based on evidence, because it's aligned with who you are. And then realize that these qualities are not just how you improve individual trade framing, trade finding, framing, and performing, but also the same habits of mind that you bring towards improving your own studied performance. Commit to the study of game film. That's your job. And that's hard work. And most people won't do it. And that's why you have an edge. Because now you know how to do it. Now the question is, will you do it? And will you get better at it through practice? That's what the effort really is. That's what the opportunity is that we have in a supportive, collaborative, professional learning environment, is to surround yourself with people that are committed to doing that kind of work. It's not a matter of judging you if you decide to do it or not. That's your choice to make. But there's an opportunity in the dojo to do this kind of work and to get better at it. And in my 40, almost 50 years now of professional practice, whether it's martial arts or teaching or soldiering or trading, or living an intentional life, this is the only way I know of creating long-term, sustained, improved performance. That's the way I choose to do it. It's the only one that's ever worked for me, and it works for me. So what I want you to look at is SPCE through this multi-level lens of metacognition. It's not just a trade frame about what to do Friday and a trade frame about what to do Monday, but it's also how to build a trade strategy for Friday and Monday, and really for SPCE all through the week. Because the work that you did on the initial frames and templates, That doesn't change on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. That's just the next step in this continually evolve. You're actually building a movie of the trade story of SPCE one frame at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. And you're bringing all of these standards of practice together to continue to build that forward. That's the workshop. That is the learning opportunity. This is how you get the value out of it. Okay? So that's what I want to say about that. I want to step back out a little further and say this is what a monthly check-in looks like at a house of trading exercise. When you get into the course and you see the house of trading psychological exercise, this is one trader's internal visualization and flashcard when he did all the parts and pieces work and what was the metaphor. This is his version of the house of trading that pulls together all his material. And in his small group in the Coaching 2020 project, this is part of the Euro group, this is how he conceptualizes Trade Central for him. And it has all the pieces that I recognize and all his descriptions and intentions and of how he's building his ideal workspace. And then that becomes his own professional standard. Now he has his own standard to judge his performance in. So that's how he does that. That's a good piece of work. I hope I can open his monthly AAR check-in because the work he did there was also very good. And this is the document that doesn't want to open for me. But I want to show you what the result of his monthly update kind of looks like. Ah, there it was open, and I, if it was a snake, it would have bit me. All right, so this is the work Barry graciously offers. So when he does his sustains, improves, and actions, the top level show it at the end of the month when he goes back and looks at his weeklies and his dailies, and he goes over the notes that he's had along the way with his accountability partners. He's identified some things that he wants to sustain. And he's identified action steps of things that are some improvement things that he could improve, get better at, or stop doing. And then he's made a prioritized list of things that he intends to act on so that his accountability partner can check in on him, say, well, you said that you were going to post some sim trades in the chat room for feedback. Did you? Did you set a daily reminder on your phone? What's up with that? And when your accountability partner has been alert, they'll help you find your better self to hold yourself to that standard. So that's how you get that done. So +1 to the Euro guys, and their ongoing demonstration of what right looks like in the Coaching 2020 project is really a powerful testimony to guys that are getting together and working on it and making it their own. And that's more important than them listening to me. It's them doing the things that make sense after they've run it through their filters and their collaborations, and the results are bearing that out. So that's why I want to come back and say, really, the important top level things to look at are these on the the time, will, pattern, and money. Those 5 simple patterns in any time frame, and then the sense-making context to quickly make sense of what's going on, and then don't try to overthink that. And then it's really being ready and taking the action on it, and then going through your disciplined learning process. And then out of this learning process, you'll build your battle drills to be ready on things. So here's what I want to say about your SPCE work. Trade it tomorrow, paper trade it forward, make those decisions and record those results. And when you're ready, add one more symbol to that stack. I recommend Brazil and the Dow, because you'll get a broad U.S. index that's conservative and which has options and futures and micro and mini futures. So you get that broad, least volatile U.S. index, tradable all by itself, and that will lead you to maybe specialize in some of the Dow symbols. So that's a nice alternative to SPCE, which is that narrow tech, groovy, speculative tech entry. So if you pick the Dow and Brazil, Brazil gives you a emerging market, a large country economy. It's in a different life cycle of its trade. It has been horribly beaten down, has not even rebounded, but it has put in a bottom and actually closed up on Friday, whereas the U.S. closed down on Friday after 2 days of selling. Now, the futures are all down right now, so I don't know what that's going to mean for Brazil, but Brazil has the advantage of being a frog champion, meaning that it's, of all the symbols we look at, it's one of the dozen best to trade every day, starting with hybrid frogs for chain trading. So that's a good symbol just to practice chain trading on. And we will add that to our ongoing forward trading case study this week. We've already been looking at the Dow for the past month using UDow and SDow and all that. So we're going to add Brazil and SPCE to our ongoing case study. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted to cover for tonight. I want to give you a chance to, instead of listening to me for 3 hours, I want to give you back some time to work on things for yourself. I'm going to hang the 2 flashcards from today. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I'm going to hang the flashcards in here under the handout. So if you can wait half a second, I'll put them here if you want them to make notes on. But I'll also hang them in Patreon if you want to get them there. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to cover, and thanks for your kind attention.